Nothing is on. Hello. I don't think it's working. I think it's, is it, can you hear me okay? Not really.
Not working.
Okay. No, it's on. It says green, but it's not. Let's see, I'm going to turn it back off. No, it's so strange. Maybe the battery's low. I might have to speak up much louder. And then I noticed too on this screen online that it's delayed.
Yeah.
Right, so I don't know if that's going to impact what's going on online, but we have it running, so hopefully everybody online can hear us, but we don't have a microphone, so yeah, so unfortunately,
Let's go
I don't
find
know if there's
tech.
anybody downstairs in the temple. Okay. Let's see. Help is on its way. So we're just going to be a minute late because Maggie, who usually comes up, is our real expert in figuring this out. So why don't we just start? Hopefully you can hear me online. Why don't we just sit together for a couple of minutes while we're waiting and just sort of settle into the space. But just wanted to welcome you to this evening, the second class of Awakening Joy. Oh, no, it's not. I don't think it's working. So. Can you hear me okay when I speak like this? I think it would be helpful to have a microphone so if somebody is coming in, if there's nobody downstairs, I guess that's the best we can do. So life brings unexpected curveballs. So just want to say welcome to the second night of this Awakening Joy course. If you weren't here last time, don't worry about it. You're always welcome just for whatever class you can show up for. You know, there's always familiar faces for people that come on a regular basis. But I just wanted to say that joy is a teaching that's very near and dear to the Buddha, and I will be going into that more over the course of this whole 10-week course. And if you missed last time, it's okay because it was mainly the introduction to the course, to Awakening Joy. And so this evening we're going to basically touch on the first theme of Awakening Joy, which is the intention to be happy. But let's just sit for a couple minutes, just in the hopes that maybe the speaker will come on in a minute. So we're just going to settle into our space, just arriving here. What's that? Checking. Oh, I think it's working.
It sounded, when you got closer to it, it sounded like it was a little bit.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, let me see if I can bend it right. Because we never had this before, that it wasn't close enough, or... Oh. Yeah, so can you hear me a little bit better?
I can hear it a
Sort
little
of?
bit now.
Okay. All right. So we'll just, thank you so much. Appreciate it. So we'll just sit together for a couple of minutes just to settle into the space. Just to allow yourself to fully arrive in the temple, feeling connected to the earth through your feet, maybe elevating your spine a bit, just to sitting up tall, to feeling more present, awake in this moment. And just allow yourself to welcome yourself for the next minute or two into the space, into the shared evening. So for this time of practicing joy together, or well-being, or contentment, happiness, whatever word resonates for you, we'll always begin with a talk, just sort of a few reflections on the theme of the evening, and then we'll have a longer meditation in the second part. So a guided meditation in the beginning, and then leading into stillness or silence, and just coming into our own space. Welcome, come on in. Yes. So tonight we're starting with the first intention really, or the first theme of the course, which is to set an intention to be happy in one's life. And a question that's already come up for several of us last time, and was actively asked at the end of the session last time, was that grieving, if one is grieving for a loved one, or one is grieving for the state of the world, can I really allow myself to be happy with so much suffering going around? And often we're really impacted by suffering in our own lives or in the lives of a loved one. And then in the larger world, of course, we might be impacted if we belong to a certain group and being discriminated against, or we might just hear about the latest war or violence or suffering that we watch on the news. So a question that often arises, with all that going around, can I really allow myself to be joyful in this world when I see so much suffering all around? And it seems to really, for this, it seems to be really important to know that it really doesn't help anyone if we're feeling miserable because of the state of the world, or because of the suffering of a loved one in our lives. And that anger and sadness and fear are just as contagious, at least that's how it seems to me, as compassion, calmness, and joy that we can offer into the world and bring out into the world. And in Buddhism, compassion really means to wish for the end of suffering, to wish for the end of suffering in ourselves, and to wish for the end of suffering in the world. And in Buddhism, it's often expressed as this very simple wish: may I and all beings be free from harm and the intention to harm. May all and all beings be free from harm and the intention to harm. So instead of being filled with pain and suffering inside ourselves when we see a loved one suffering, we can meet the suffering, or we can rather learn to meet the suffering of the world by staying really centered in ourselves, and then offering compassion in whatever way feels appropriate in that moment. And at least what I find, that often the medicine that is most needed when we are in the presence of someone who's suffering is to be simply a listening presence, instead of trying to come up with solutions. I think it's safe to say that for all of us, that there's a real temptation when I see, oh, this person that I'm with is really in pain, that we want to find a solution or say, oh, why don't you go there? Why don't you do this? And instead, can we simply just be a presence to them, not to wishing it to be otherwise, but just to be here and sitting with the person's pain? That can be often the most needed medicine in the world that we can offer another being. So it's really kind of like inquiring within ourselves, can I stay with this discomfort that this suffering or pain that this person is telling me about, or that I'm seeing in another person? Can I, bring awareness to the discomfort that it might create in myself, and can I allow that discomfort to be there and just be available for this person just by listening to them? So it's kind of like accepting, okay, this is how it is right now. And often really, compassion goes alongside equanimity or an evenness of mind, where we might see a loved one suffering. And even someone last week spoke here very directly about a very near and dear person going through a drug addiction, and how hard it is for that person to feel like they can't do anything about that. They just see that loved one suffering. And so equanimity is also a very important heart practice in Buddhism, where one can just say, this is how it is right now. I wish it could be different, but this is how it is for that person right now, and maybe all I can do is be a loving and compassionate presence in that person's life. and just hope that eventually that compassion that I can add to the situation can help that person through this very difficult time. And I just want to really highlight too that at the same time it's also really important to respond to our own grief and suffering with compassion and not pretend that it's not there. I think especially when someone or when we ourselves feel pain and it feels overwhelming or it feels uncomfortable or I really don't want to feel this, how can we make it or how can we bring a loving attention to it so that we can recognize the suffering inside of ourselves and then just allow it to be there and bring a caring attention not just to others but also to ourselves. And the Buddha himself so famously said that one could search the whole universe and not find anyone more worthy of compassion than ourselves. And I think this is worth repeating. One could search the whole universe and not find anyone more worthy of compassion than ourselves. And so he also said that the most appropriate response in the face of suffering is always compassion. And that includes self-compassion when we ourselves are in pain. And it doesn't mean that we're rolling over and just saying, oh, I wish everything could be happy, or we wish for this person to be well. When there's active harm being done in the world, it can also be a real fierce compassion. And I think that the civil rights movement is such a beautiful example of bringing an active, non-violent action into the world that says this is not okay and this needs to stop. But there's still this action is still being guided by love and by compassion that one can bring into the world. So if we reflect for a moment in terms of joy, bringing joy and happiness into our own being or ourselves, I think we can reflect that whatever we do is probably motivated by wanting to be happy within ourselves, even if what we do is unskillful. And we see so many unskillful actions in the world by, different political leaders, maybe different people in our lives, and we wonder how can they be, this unskillful or bring so much harm. And just to remember, it doesn't mean that we love this person very easily, but just to remember they themselves also just want to wish happiness for themselves, and they just don't know how to do better in this moment. It doesn't mean that we don't take in, that creates a lot of harm, but it can sort of help to keep our heart open at least for whatever suffering is created in the world, and to recognize if we wish them well, that's actually the best medicine maybe that we can offer them to have that suffering stop in the world at some point. If we wish them to be unwell, or if we wish them to be harmed in some way, it doesn't really add any medicine or well-being to the world. And so the path of awakening joy or awakening well-being in ourselves really starts with the intention to be joyful and happy and to experience true well-being in ourselves. And to me, enlightenment, in the perspective of Buddhist enlightenment, to me enlightenment in modern terms or in modern terminology really means to come to a place of complete inner mental health, where we have really uprooted these three afflictions or poisons that the Buddha talks about of greed, hatred, and delusion. When they are fully uprooted in ourselves through our mindfulness practice, but also through practicing loving kindness and compassion and joy and equanimity, which are the 4 heart practices in Buddhism, we really then come to a place of complete mental health eventually, and that this state of complete mental health is absolutely available within each of our human hearts. And we might just experience it in little doses every once in a while, but ultimately, just like the Buddha, we can reach that state of complete enlightenment and well-being, as we stay with our practice. So our first theme of the overall Awakening Joy course, like I already said, is this intention to be happy. And I think it's safe to say that all of us wish to be happy. Maybe raise your hand. Is there anyone that doesn't wish to be happy? Okay, all right. So is it what is there another wish that you have to bring out into the world or for yourself? Is it connected to happiness or?
I thought you said who wants to be happy. So.
Oh, you said you raise your hand to be happy. Yes, exactly. Yes, thank you. Thank you. You actually. So yeah, so raising hand. So but raise your hand if you don't wish to be happy. Basically, maybe you couldn't hear me very well because for some reason this is not really settling in right in front of my mouth. But I just want to say, if you don't wish to be happy, this probably isn't the right class for you, and you're dismissed. So you're not dismissed. Obviously, it's just adding a little bit of humor to the class. But I think it's safe to say that as humans, we all really wish to be happy, and we might not call it happiness. We might call it, we wish to have a peaceful heart, or contentment in our hearts. So again, whatever wording resonates with you, but I think it's safe to say that we all wish to have that or experience that in our hearts. So, and the essence, like I've said many times in these classes on Wednesday evenings, the essence of Buddha's teaching really centers around the end of suffering and the path to true happiness. And this path really starts, like I already said, with the intention to be joyful, to be happy, to experience true well-being. And when we can simply begin with this very wish to experience happiness in our hearts. And related to the heart practices, the Buddha actually taught what is known as the 4 Brahma Viharas, which often translates as these divine dwelling places in the heart. And so these are these heart qualities that we can bring alive with our practice. And one of them that very directly relates to invoking joy in our hearts is the practice of metta, or loving kindness, as it's often translated. And so metta, or loving kindness, is this very benevolent quality of the heart that wishes oneself and others well in the world. And so in loving kindness meditation, we can actually cultivate a friendly attitude towards ourselves and wish for ourselves to be well and happy in our hearts and minds and bodies. And so we can actually learn to incline the mind towards well-being and recall this intention to be happy throughout the day whenever we can remember it. And it can be more like a soft intention that we can bring to our day. May I be well and happy, instead of more like setting a big goal and then evaluating, well, are we happy? Are we not happy? It's not more like, no, I would like to just incline my heart and mind towards well-being, towards happiness. And it's just a soft intention that we're offering ourselves throughout the day. And over time, by recalling our intention to be happy as much as possible, we will likely notice a positive shift in our sense of well-being. And I just want to say that just as all of you are participating in this joy course this evening, I myself am going through a similar course right now, offered by my dear Buddhist mentor and teacher, James Barris. I think I mentioned to you last time that he actually wrote a book on joy. And so I'm currently in this teacher training to teach Awakening Joy, but for the purposes of a Buddhist temple, I'm teaching it with a lot more Buddhist terminology and, from a deeper place of the Buddhist perspective. But I just want to say that since I've been in the course now for a few weeks, I really notice how my mind is more on the lookout just for taking in the good. Whenever somebody is kind to me, I really notice it and just stop myself and take that in. Oh wow, that was a lot of kindness right now. Let me take this in for a moment. And just really experiencing it in the body and in the mind and in the heart. To really stop to take in the good, especially in a world that's so filled with ungoodness, for lack of a better word, with so much tragedy and trauma filled world that we live in. It's really important to balance that with taking in the good that's also very readily available in this world that we live in. So most important about this practice is to not tie our happiness to certain conditions of our lives. So for example, telling yourself, well, when I retire, I can be happy. Or when I move out of San Diego because it's becoming too expensive, then I'll be happy. Or when my kid stops using drugs, I will be happy. Or if I can beat this cancer, I will be happy. So basically, postponing joy and happiness for a future state that we might reach at some point, and not recognizing that it can actually be cultivated and it can be felt in this very moment, that we can be happy right here and now. So we can actually learn to place it at the center of our being and just be on the lookout for it in our lives as much as possible. And if evoking joy and happiness feels like a stretch at the moment because there's a lot of suffering going on in your own hearts or in a loved one's hearts, or you just find yourself or your community just really surrounded by a lot of suffering, one can also simply begin by noticing the moments that one is not feeling anxious, that one is not feeling depressed or grief-stricken or despaired. And for example, I tend to be more anxious or fearful. And so for me, it feels really important to notice, right now, I just had a really meaningful conversation or tea with a friend, and I'm noticing, in this moment, my heart actually feels really open. It doesn't feel contracted with suffering or with anxiety or fear. And so it's really, again, very important to balance out these positive and negative emotions and to recall, I'm actually feeling quite well in this moment. And to allow yourself to feel that it's okay and that you're adding beauty into the world and to the person that you're with, when you can emanate well-being instead of suffering with the person that you're surrounded with. And I mentioned that I really admire this particular Buddhist monk. He's actually from Germany originally, but lives in the United States. His name is Bhikkhu Analayo, and I often quote him. He's a very wonderful Buddhist scholar and teacher who has translated a lot of the Buddhist scriptures from Chinese, from the Pali, from Sanskrit. And so I wanted to just quote him for the purposes of this talk this evening. He says that if one's mind has a tendency to roll in unwholesome thoughts, every moment in which this does not happen is praiseworthy and deserves to be acknowledged in a positive light. I want to say that one more time. If one's mind has a tendency to roll in unwholesome thoughts, every moment in which this does not happen is praiseworthy and deserves to be acknowledged in a positive light. And Thich Nhat Hanh, the famous Zen master and peace activist, always said that be aware when you don't have a toothache. So be aware when something painful is not currently present, be it a toothache or be it a sense of irritation or frustration. In this moment I'm actually feeling quite peaceful. That's really important to take in terms of bringing more joy and well-being into one's own mind and heart. So just knowing that one's joy and happiness or a sense of contentment can be a real gift to everyone in your life and can actually be an inspiration to others. And I don't know if you've ever been, but there's a wonderful Buddhist monastery up in Escondido that was founded by Thich Nhat Hanh. A few of you are saying that yes, you've been there. It's called Deer Park. And if you've ever been and watched the monastics there, they normally offer a half day of mindfulness where they walk together with the community in silence. And just the joy and well-being that these monastics, these nuns and monks emanate is really contagious actually. And it really always gives me a message. It's absolutely okay to feel contented, to feel joyful, to be at peace, and to see how much of a positive impact that has. Someone just like this monastic who is walking so joyfully and so freely, clearly in their heart and minds, can really have a positive impact on the person, on the people in our community that we impact on a daily basis. So it's actually possible to make it a practice to look for the good in ourselves, in others, and in the world. Even if it doesn't feel natural to us, it will still have an impact on us in a positive way and on the people in our lives. So a central aspect, or practice rather, of this course is noticing, like I've already said, noticing wholesome states of mind, such as joy, happiness, and contentment when they have arisen in our own hearts and minds. And sometimes, just to illustrate in a different way, not just from the Buddhist perspective, I might bring in some discoveries from neuroscience. So I just wanted to bring one particular one this evening, where it has been clearly shown through neuroscience that when we feel grateful or happy, calm or compassionate, it actually registers more deeply if we are actively present right in the middle of that experience, when we sort of have our radar out for these positive experiences or states of mind or feelings that are going on inside of us. And so I was walking in the Florida Canyon, not obviously not on a day like this when it was raining, but it was a beautiful sunny day last week, and I came across, I think how a lot of our canyons have that right now, this beautiful field of natural, flowers, daisies I think, and it just sort of immediately brought up the sense of natural joy in me. So it wasn't something that I was cultivating or thinking, oh, can I take this in, or oh, there's something good. It's just like this natural joy just immediately arose in me. And so I just wanted to refer back to what a couple of people expressed in the question and answer session last week, that they said that it sort of feels awkward or not right, or like a chore to cultivate joy. And my friend Bruce, who's actually taking the class online, he wasn't able to figure out how to write in the chat, so he wrote me an email afterwards, and he shared this with me, and I said, well, can I quote you? And I said, absolutely. So I just want to quote just a line or two of what he shared last week. He said that joy that is true joy surprises me. I can hardly imagine it before it happens. And he said that if I'm looking for joy, I will likely unwittingly exclude it. So I just wanted to address that by a moment and say that yes, so for example, when I was happily surprised by the joy in the Florida Canyon that naturally arose in me, and since I'm also, it's okay, there's sort of different expressions of joy. There's one way where it just naturally arises, and another can be where we're actually on the lookout for a sense of well-being, or if somebody's being very kind or is doing a benevolent act, to really pause, like I said, and take in the goodness, to let ourselves experience that goodness more deeply in our hearts. So it can either arise, just by itself, and then it's still really important to be on the lookout for that and to see, oh, yeah, I'm feeling this natural joy arise in me as I'm watching these beautiful daisies filling this field, and to just pause for a moment and take in the goodness of that. It's really important, especially in this complicated and traumatized world that we live in, to really take in the good of that, this sense of joy inside of us, and to pause for that. So there's a neuroscientist that's quite popular and has been quite popular in the Buddhist community, because he's also actually written a book, or one of several, and that book is called Buddha's Brain, and his name is Rick Hansen. I very highly recommend this book. It's a very wonderful book. And in this book, he presents this very simple formula for what he calls taking in the good. And he suggests that whenever we experience true well-being, to let our awareness register how it feels in our body and mind for 15 seconds. And he says that if you do that 6 times a day, you will then notice a significant impact on your overall level of happiness and well-being. And he says that not only will you be deepening or sculpting, as he says, the neural pathways in your brain, but you will also be strengthening the habit of being present for the moments on a regular basis and not missing them. So these moments of joy and happiness. So I just want to say that one more time in my own words in a very simple way. So whenever you are aware that a moment of goodness or a moment of wellness has arisen, or something beautiful is happening in your environment, to just really pause and take that in for 15 seconds. And that can maybe be the amount of 3 breaths or 5 breaths, to just pause. Let me really take this in. And then to really feel that in your whole being. And if you can do that 6 times a day, that it will likely change your overall sense of well-being in a very positive way. And I can really say that that's worked for me. I might have not been applying such a rigid formula, but I feel like by being on the lookout for what's good in my surroundings, and by being on the lookout, by feeling open when I'm feeling joy inside and really taking that in, to pause for that it's really made a significant positive impact on my level of well-being. So I wanted to end the talk with a funny story, actually by the founder of positive psychology, Dr. Martin Seligman. And he discovered in his research that the greatest source of happiness actually comes from identifying your gifts and offering them to others in the spirit of kindness and compassion. And Dr. Seligman told his first positive psychology class about an experience that he had with his 5-year-old daughter, Nikki. So he says that one afternoon, while he was weeding in his garden, his 5-year-old daughter, Nikki, took the weeds and just threw them up in the air delightfully. She was so pleased, and she just kept bringing up the weeds and throwing them up in the air. And Dr. Seligman confessed that he was actually quite angry, that he became quite angry with his daughter Nikki, and then just sort of harshly sent her away. Well, go away, you're ruining my work here in the garden. He was very impatient, and he later confessed that he tends to be very easily frustrated and irritated, and on an overall basis. And then a few minutes later, Nikki, his daughter, returned and told him, "Daddy, I want to talk to you. Do you remember me before my 5th birthday? From when I was 3 until the time that I became 5, I was a whiner. I whined every day. And on my 5th birthday, I decided I wasn't going to whine anymore. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. And if I can stop whining, you can stop being such a grump." So, a teaching and an inspiration from a 5-year-old girl for all of us, I think. So with all these words, I would like to just offer a meditation this evening on intention. And so just inviting you all for the second half, we have some time for this meditation, just inviting you to find a posture that feels right for meditation for you this evening. And yes, it's wonderful listening to yourself. Some of you are coming up to sit in the front, and if you're at home, and you would have the luxury, if you want to actually stretch out on a couch, if being more reclined feels better, as long as there's still a sense of alertness in the body and mind and heart, and at the same time a sense of ease and relaxation. it's comfortable, you can close your eyes or maybe have your gaze downcast, just to keep a little bit more of an inner focus. So in other words, not looking around the room. So just finding a posture for meditation, bringing a sense of presence and relaxation to your whole being. And just for a moment, just allow yourself to tune into the breath, the sensations of breathing inside your body. Taking a few deep breaths, deep and full and slow, to invite more presence, truly being here. And then imagining that you're breathing in and out from the heart. With each breath, you are awakening love, compassion, joy, and peace that naturally resides in your heart. And with each breath, invite yourself to relax a little bit more. Relaxing the muscles of your face, letting your tongue float relaxed in your mouth, and feeling the deliciousness of relaxation flow down your neck and shoulders. Relaxing the muscles of your back, down your torso to your belly. And here take some deep belly breaths, softening the belly with each breath, each in-breath and each out-breath. You can feel the relaxation flowing down your hips and legs, all the way down into your feet. With the next breath, see if you can breathe up or imagine breathing up the life force of the earth and feeling that energy coming into your body, emanating every cell in your body and infusing your heart with that life force energy. And finding your own way to the still, quiet center of your being. Your body relaxed, and your mind spacious and yet alert. And now let a time come into your awareness when you were filled with happiness and well-being. It can be an experience from your life or your imagination. Some situation that just gladdens your heart and inspires like an inner smile. And see if you can recall this experience as vividly as you can with as many senses. Visualizing where you are, the shapes, the colors. Who you are with. Or maybe you're by yourself. And for a few seconds, really explore the felt sense of this experience. And if nothing comes to mind, just relax and be present to this precious moment. And now, letting go of a specific situation or memory, become aware of the felt sense of well-being. What does it feel like in your body, in your emotions? Your heart, in your awareness. And just breathe these feelings into your body, letting them fill your body, your heart. And take a moment just to abide and deepen into this experience. And from this sense of wholeness, ask yourself, what is my intention for this course? And it might just not be for the course, but what is my intention for this life, for this time in my life? And as the poet Mary Oliver asks, what is it you plan to do with your one and precious life? How can you expand and awaken more joy? And now, almost as if you have a magic wand, imagine living with greater joy. What does that feel like? How would life be different? More rich and colorful and vivid? And just exploring that in your being for a little while. Whatever is present in you at the moment is a teaching on wisdom and compassion. So if there's a resistance to the joy practice or awakening joy, let that be there. And just offer it a kind and loving attention. as we bring this meditation to a close, once again set an intention, perhaps even deeper than before, to live with greater joy, appreciation, contentment, and generally choose to be happy. And if you wish, let a symbol arise for awakening joy. So it's like an anchor, and you can just think of it, and that may awaken joy in your being. And know that you can reawaken joy by focusing on your heart, taking a few breaths in and out of your heart, and imagining or remembering this pervading sense of well-being. Thank you for your practice this evening, regardless of what it evoked in you, what feelings arose or mind states. We have a few minutes for comments or questions, and just want to say if you're at home or wherever you are, if you want to write a question in the chat, that's always welcome. We just want to open it up for a few minutes to share in our wisdom, maybe ask a question. See if there's anything alive in you at the moment that wants to be shared. You can take a few moments just to reflect. And if not, we can just sit together quietly for a few more moments. We have about 7 minutes, and if you feel that out of the space a question arises, that's wonderful. It's kind of like I think what they do at Quaker meetings. You just sit together quietly, and then maybe some comment arises, a question.
I don't really have a question, but just a comment. When you were sharing earlier, I kept thinking about, for me, that joy comes from two things. And one, it's like the absence of anger, because I find that the most times when I'm not in joy is because I'm angry at something. And then the other thing that was kept coming to mind was how can I bring joy to other people? Because I feel like that's what in turn gives me joy. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the absence of negative emotions or mind states can really lead to a lot of joy. I think especially in meditation, I find that oftentimes just being with the breath and then maybe experiencing the whole body in a more calm or peaceful state, even if there were initially difficult emotions, if I can hold space for them or allow them to be there, and if I just calm my body and calm my mind and just have a soft focus on the breath, when that eventually sort of subsides, that there's actually, like you said, through the absence, a lot of well-being comes in, a lot of a sense of peace sort of replaces that oftentimes. I have experienced that too. Yeah, and then sharing, the second one, like you said, was sharing like a sense of well-being with other people, or sharing one's gifts.
Yeah, I mean, just trying to bring joy to others.
Bringing joy to others, yes. That's very joy producing.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. And then in terms of this course, to really take in the goodness of that, or really letting ourselves experience that, how that feels in our heart is very much joy-producing, or to sort of deepen the experience of contentment or well-being or peace or whatever word resonates with the experience that you're having. But I think it's wonderful that you pointed out the absence, and I think that that's maybe a starting place for all of us, especially when we're feeling, well, wait a minute, forget about joy, If I can just even have a moment of peace and not feeling irritated or frustrated, that's really a wonderful start. Like Thich Nhat Hanh said, that experience about not having a toothache, I think that's a wonderful experience, or a wonderful example of that, actually. So thank you for sharing that. What's your name?
Katie.
Katie. Thank you. Yeah. Yes?
So along the same lines, I noticed that it wasn't that, it's almost like it's a choice to not want to let go of the irritation or the responsibility that I gotta fix this. It's sort of like clinging on this, fear-based blanket, right? And like on one hand, I felt this conflict, it was so peaceful and beautiful, and I truly do believe and have that sense of natural, spontaneous joy that pops up. It's sort of, they were sort of at conflict, like, I wasn't quite ready to let go of my protective ways but knowing that, I gotta figure out some kind of a resolution, right, to allow that natural joy to come up.
Yeah, and I think there's already a lot of mindfulness, because I think what you're describing is more sort of the habit energy of the mind to cling to whatever state it is, irritation or fear, and to begin there, like I said, it's not about forcing or cultivating in the sense of, my goal is now to be happy or to be joyful, but rather to start where you're at. And I think it's beautiful. You might even imagine like holding each in the palm of your hands, this sort of natural joy that can arise, and on the other side, this fear or irritation, and finding it, what you might be experience as conflict can actually live side by side, and how if you can hold it like that in your heart, it doesn't actually have to be a conflict. That there can be conflicting emotions in the heart, and once we allow them just to be there, it's like, okay, I'm allowing this, and I'm also making room for that. That it's not like, this has to go. It's like, no, these are both part of my human experience, and I'm going to give them as much space as they need to be here to glean wisdom and compassion from them. So, not forcing anything at all. That I think the wisdom, when you can hold space as you're doing, most apparently, that wisdom will arise, or things will shift within your felt experience to greater states of well-being. And well-being can just even be, like you said, the fear, the absence of a negative emotion. That can also really be a starting point. Or noticing that there's a conflict. This is overall a class on Buddhist mindfulness, so notice what's present in our awareness is the greatest, is the starting place for all of us. And I think that's very beautiful. Yeah, don't force anything. I think it'll just sort itself out. I have a lot of confidence from the questions that you've raised here and the comments that you've made. I have a lot of confidence in you. So just stay with the process for yourself, whatever the process is for you. And please remind me of your name one more time.
Sharon.
Sharon, yes, thank you, because I know you've been here, asked very wonderful questions. Thank you for all of us, being a teacher to all of us. Thank you. Yeah. Let me just make sure to somebody's just writing in. Thank you for sharing the practice. You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Any other questions? Yes, there's a couple more. Yes, starting right here. Sorry.
We had a question that came up from the experience last week where we had a meditation on love, and we were, cultivating self-love, and it went outwards, like towards others, towards the room, towards the world. And for both of us, it felt much more fulfilling when we extended that love outwards versus inwards. And we were wondering, is that a very normal experience? would cultivating self-love be an answer? But I feel like I love myself a lot, and yeah, it just doesn't feel as fulfilling until you extend it outwards. Is that like very normal? Yeah.
Whatever is happening inside of you, that's normal. It's all because it's all human experiences and it's all emotions. And yes, you might be someone that resonates more, that's more sort of spacious and really resonates sending it out into the world, and maybe less of a connection. Do you feel like there's a connection though in terms of sending it to yourself? Or it sounded like you were still resonating at some level, maybe just not as much.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you're neglecting to take care of your own well-being or being benevolent towards yourself. Is that correct?
Yeah.
It's just that you're feeling it more strongly. And that's perfectly fine. In metta practice and loving kindness practice, there's sort of this process that we go through, beginning with ourselves and then a loved one and a benefactor and then a neutral person, a difficult person. Oftentimes in the beginning, just as an example, loving kindness might not resonate as much with someone we finding difficult to be with. We might send them love, but there's really a contraction in the heart. So it's just to give another example of how we might have different experiences with whoever or what group we're sending it out to. And really the only practice there is to just notice, and whatever is happening, to have a loving attention around it, not a judgment. Oh, I should be feeling just as much towards myself. No, oh, interesting, I'm actually resonating, or there's more of a felt sense when I'm sending loving kindness out to larger groups of people. And just to notice that. That's really all that mindfulness is calling for. So it's all good. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does.
It
Yeah.
does. Okay. Thank you. What's your name?
Destiny.
Destiny, yes. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm not good with names, but I'm trying really hard to remember names. Thank you for speaking up. And there was one more person in the back that had a question. Yes?
Well, I don't know if this question maybe will turn into a question, but I had thought that it can be hard sometimes to be attached to like joy being in certain types of areas of your life, or like attached to certain things or relationships or like a hobby or a person or something in your life that changes drastically for different reasons because of a relationship ending or your health or something, and something that brings you a lot of joy can shift a lot, and then it can be hard to like redirect the remembering that like you're really responsible for your joy and it has to come from inside, and being able to like miss specific types of joy while still like cultivating joy generally throughout your life and your day.
Yeah. And attachment sort of mimics as loving kindness. It's sort of, I think it's a very natural for us to become attached to the people that we love, and then when circumstances change, it makes it more difficult to experience joy, especially if the circumstance that is changing is painful to us. So it makes it harder to experience maybe joy in the same way, or we might notice it shifting. And again, just to notice and to know, this is how it is in this moment, and it might be really difficult to feel joyful in the moment when there's a breakup, for example. That's actually a painful experience, and in those moments, a more call for response might be compassion towards yourself. I tend to be a person who is very attached to loved ones. And it's also always a check-in for myself. Is this really coming from a place of unconditional love? For example, I'm coming up to an experience where my partner is going to be going away for a very long time, and it triggers a lot of fear and attachment. Oh, I wish you didn't go. And then but knowing, no, this is actually something really good that's happening in their life, and I want them to be happy, and I want them to have these experiences. So it's sort of an internal process maybe that one can go through and just notice, oh, now joy is shifting, now it's less, or now it's more, or it's really dependent on something. What we're really learning in this process is something that we can really bring up from within, that we can cultivate from within. That's sort of the most trustworthy sense of joy or love that we can probably experience, at least from a Buddhist perspective. The Buddha always said to be a an island onto ourselves as best as we can, to rely on ourselves. So cultivating these wholesome states of minds or emotions that's a good path, a trustworthy path of really having them arise more and more in our being. But it doesn't mean that it's not difficult yet when we are attached and how it shifts. And I don't really know if that's what you were asking, truthfully, or if there is a piece that's still missing for you in the answer. So, no, it's good. What's your name?
Jessie.
Hi, Jessie. Yeah, it's
Hi.
good to meet you. And I guess for the sake of time, we're already 5 minutes late. Maybe just check if there is no question. Any last question? Just in case. Yes, one more question. Okay.
In some sense of kind of moderating joy, what if you have too much joy, or if you have a lot of joy, do you want to kind of moderate that down as well, kind of like keep everything in equilibrium, or like is it going to set the bar too high if you're too joyful?
Well, at least my teacher, James Barris, who's teaching and awakening joy for many years, he says that when you have a moment of joy, and not just really experience it, but you can also actually make it bigger. That I think a lot of people are afraid of experiencing joy or real happiness. It's like, oh no, I'm not supposed to feel that. I think there's so many messages that we get that, oh no, we shouldn't, we should be more composed or more measured. But no, I think when you have a moment of real joy, really let yourself feel it and even make it bigger. As long as you know it's going to shift again, like Jessie says, you experience joy and then it might shift again or it might go away. As long as you don't become attached to it, really let yourself experience it fully in your heart and mind. And that's really what neuroscience also suggests. Let yourself experience that more fully to really increase your levels of well-being. It's very conducive to one's well-being, so don't be afraid of it. Maybe just notice what it feels inside when you make it bigger and let it be there. And then notice again when it's absent, oh, I was really attached, I want this to come back now, I want to feel this big joy again. And just notice that, how that might create suffering. So it's always about mindfulness, just being aware what's happening here, what's creating more well-being and what is creating more suffering in my life. So. And what's your name?
Mark.
Hi, Mark. Good to meet you. Okay, I think it's time for Stephen to come up. Thank you so much for your practice. I hope to see you again next time. By the way, you can always just leave at 8. We've been going a little bit over, and some people have. But if you ever feel like, no, I really need to go at 8, just please leave. So thank you for your time and for coming out on this very rainy evening. Thanks for being here. Yes?
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm tonight's host, Stephen. We opened the Dharma